damn, I have $5,000. This is amazing. I'm going to invest it. I joined in 1998. The stock market was just going up pretty easily. The 90s was the best. I wasn't ever going to be the best in the world at managing money. What I was doing the first couple years was just handing it to someone I'd never met and getting paid for gathering it. I want to be a quote unquote team player. And from my upbringing, it was like, you want to be a good boy, you want to do the right things, but sometimes the right things require difficult conversations. I was showing up on webinars with hundreds of people, but I didn't see who they were. So my education was now, that was smart to be one to many, but I didn't get to feel a connection to any outcomes.
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dream Catchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome. And if you haven't ever taken notes when you've listened to an episode, today is your day. I've got Garrett Gunderson in with me today. And if you don't know him, just type his name in and you're going to get pages and pages of results. This guy has written books. He's got more books on the way. We were talking earlier. I think he finished 2 or 3 books in the first quarter of this year. And he's so invested in creating content like this that he's opening a publishing arm. Now, he's not just a thought leader. He's a doer. Garrett, I opened these shows by asking a simple question.
Yep.
So you had an exit?
I did have an exit in 2021.
So he built something, y'all, and he sold it. He had a liquidity event, and I would put it in the bucket of life-changing money. Now, we don't ever ask people how much money they made, but what we do know is people have options on the backside of those things. And so what I would like to do, Garrett, is kind of go on the journey of you getting to the place of how you got to where you are now. And so let's go back. Did you ever have a job? Did you work in corporate America? Or were you an employee?
The closest thing I had to a job is my freshman year of college. On the weekends, I worked for like an inbound call center, taking orders, and did that on Saturdays and Sundays. Before that, I owned my own business detailing cars. I had a car wash. It was called Garrett Gunderson's Car Care. Started when I was 15. Won Young Entrepreneur of the Year with it, which was hilarious because I never really made that much money with it. I was just good at presenting about it. Won the Governor's Young Entrepreneur for it as well, and came with $5,000. That's how I got in the financial world, because I wanted to invest my $5,000, which I thought as a teenager was a ton of money, not realizing how little it was. But to me, I was like, damn, I have $5,000. This is amazing. I'm going to invest it. And my mom was like, I'm not signing off on any of these crazy investments, She's like, you're going to put that in the bank. And so when I was 18, that's when I finally started figuring out where I wanted to invest it, and got offered an internship when I was 19 at a financial firm.
Wow. All right. So you wanted to invest. And so instead of just giving somebody your money, you became an advisor?
Yeah, man. I at 19, to call me an advisor is a bit of a stretch, because I was basically peddling mutual funds and life insurance, and I was just bringing the clients in to talk to the manager. But by the time I was 21, that was radically different, because I joined in 1998. The stock market was just going up pretty easily. The 90s was the best. And then when it started to go down in 2000, a lot of my clients were like my aunts and uncles and, my grandma and grandpa. And all of a sudden I went from being little boy genius to what the hell's going on? The market's going down. And so at that point, because I was still in college and single, I just flew somewhere every single month and leveraged my young age to be able to talk to really brilliant minds. And that's when I made this shift towards, how can I help people be efficient with their money, plug their financial leaks, save on tax, save on interest, save on non-performing fees, save on duplicate coverages or improper structure with their insurances. And I became really geeked out on that, because it was hard as hell to watch people lose money and I was like, my firm's like, tell them they're in it for the long haul. I'm like, they don't like that answer. Tell them the market's on sale. They said it would have been nice to know beforehand, that it was going to go on sale. And so that kind of led me down building a completely different financial services firm, which was not managing money. I didn't do any assets under management. It was more consulting and building financial teams and financial organization and plugging leaks and building efficiency for entrepreneurs primarily.
So you decided to leave the system, right? Because the system just wants to focus on AUM. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was labeled a fanatic. Jerome, they called me a fanatic because I was incessantly curious and just asking so many questions. And I remember I was 21 years old, sitting in this meeting and they brought in an attorney, and the attorney was talking about a strategy. Basically, he was talking about estate planning and he was talking about second to die insurance. And I had done the math that even though the premiums were lower, that couples didn't die together. I actually talked to the actuaries at the insurance company and they said they'd never had, in the 20 years since they had offered second to die, any couple die together. And I was like, so what is the length of time between that? Because if someone dies and instead of getting a death benefit, they just get another request for a premium, that's a huge opportunity cost. And I got in this huge fight with this like 60-year-old attorney telling me that I was making a mistake by having people like pay more tax. And I'm like, yeah, but even if they pay more tax, they're still gonna end up with more money rather than getting a bill. And so we got in this argument and the agent, the main manager was like, I don't know if I want you in these meetings anymore, and then I found two really insightful young guys. They were 35 at the time or 33 and I was, like 21 or whatever, but they were really cutting edge as well. So we formed a partnership. And we formed this firm called Ingenuity, and we created this movement called the Producer Revolution, where we actually put out. This was way before the times of like WordPress. We had to build our own platform, but we put out a membership that people paid $20 a month for, and we gave them newsletters and interviews where we'd interview really intelligent people that we thought were on the the key people in certain categories. Like I think the first person I ever interviewed for that was Dennis Waitley, that wrote The Psychology of Winning, and just people like that. And we had these once a month forums, and so we really did things very differently. And we were a little bit, we were doing study groups, and then all of a sudden financial advisors started attending our study groups. That grew to be over 150 people attending a study group that was just my two partners, and we had a fourth one. And actually my fourth partner is the one that just helped me rewrite the book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? That was one of the books in this first quarter of this year that we rewrote. So I know you asked one question, I just can't help myself but talk a lot. So,
Well, I think the color that you're giving us for this outline is just phenomenal, because I think the youth are the people who innovate more often than the folks who have just been indoctrinated into the system. And your willingness to say, no, there's a different way. And I think anybody who risked their relationship capital, which is what you did when you brought people in, and then you brought them to a person who got less than favorable results, and then they kind of shoulder shrugged. It's kind of the attitude of a lot of people who label themselves advisors. And I think you have a problem with that because it's not actually in the best interest of the folks that they're serving. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is I knew that I wasn't ever going to be the best in the world at managing money. That what I was doing the first couple of years was just handing it to someone I'd never met and getting paid for gathering it. So I was a glorified asset gatherer. And when the market went down, and I was now going to just tell these people these stories that I didn't really buy into, that's where every single month for 26 straight months, I flew somewhere and just interviewed bright minds. Like, it's amazing when you're 21, if you're inquisitive, people will meet with you. They'll just, I went to New York and I just went to these big companies, and I met with product designers. I met with, you name it, like just from one room to the next with a little red memo pad back in that day, just asking tons of questions, because I was fairly confident when the market was going up at 98, 99, like I had anything to do with it. So I felt really good about myself. And then when the market went down, and I thought, oh man, these were people that cashed out double E bonds. They were no risk at all. And all of a sudden they're like, wait, this isn't going the way that we thought. And these were people that worked as coal miners. And these were people that worked tirelessly, and this was their life savings. And all of a sudden it fell at risk. It was like, I didn't want to be part of that narrative, and I didn't want to be part of that system. And I found out, when I went to a family office for the first time as a fly on the wall, I was like, wait, they're emphasizing tax savings. That the whole meeting was on tax savings. I was like, well, that seems like a smart thing to learn about, and it just started looking at they're all about financial organization and being comprehensive and communicating. But the problem was they only want to meet with people who are uber wealthy. That was their market. And where I grew up in a small coal mining town, I didn't really know any uber wealthy people, you know? And so I went from like fascinated to frustrated and said, I need to build this for the people that wouldn't have access to it. And that was a very naive thought. I didn't realize how hard that was going to be, because I wasn't going to build I wasn't going to work for just one person, like a family office that way. I wanted to create like a fractional one or a virtual one where we could have people that would be different companies that would communicate with each other, and they could service 125 people at a time was what the goal was. We struggled with that 125 number, by the way. It really, once we got to like 75 or 105, everything started to break down a little bit because their capacity was challenged and they tried to hire and they weren't always good at hiring. And so I realized I wasn't really building the most scalable business on that side of things, but I was really engaged in it and loved seeing the results and understanding like the difference we made. We'd host like 2.5-day workshops and get to know people and really like have this like accountability that would get them results, and people get more done in a year than most people get done in 10 years. And then I brought on partners, and when they knew it wasn't going to scale, they really wanted to scale it with a program that had less handholding and less personal touch and, you know, more responsibility on the customer. And they just didn't get the same results, which made me frustrated and made me feel more disconnected and led me to be more disenchanted. And the reason I wanted to sell the business. And the reason I had to sell the business was because I didn't speak up along the way. I wanted to be a quote unquote team player. And from my upbringing, it was like, you want to be a good boy, you want to do the right things, but sometimes the right things require difficult conversations. And my people pleasing put me in a place where I was no longer the visionary that was excited about what I was creating. I became like a cog in the wheel, and it wasn't a cog that I wanted to be. It was like I was showing up on webinars with hundreds of people, but I didn't see who they were. So my education was now, you know, that was smart to be one to many, but I didn't get to feel a connection to any outcomes. And it just got to the point where I was like, all right, this isn't for me anymore. You know, and when I sold, I had the best 5 months of my life. Before I sold, I decided in November of 2020, I was going to sell. And for that from November 15th until April 15th, I worked on a comedy special around the topic of money. And it was amazing, and it was challenging, and it was fun, and it was like, I just had like this excitement that was exuding, because it was like, can I even do this? And I loved doing it. And like, dude, it was crazy the people that were on my team. Like, I'm a rookie. I started doing comedy as a hobby August of 2017. And here we are, April of 2021, doing a full-fledged comedy special with 4 different unions involved during, you know, COVID, by the way, which made it a little bit complicated. But I had Marty Callner as an executive producer. He won an Emmy with Seinfeld, you know, doing his I'm Telling You for the Last Time. I had, you know, Barry Katz, who managed Chappelle for 8 years. I mean, it was an insane team, and it was such a beautiful, amazing night. And that selling my business gave me that freedom. But then that finished in April, and then I finally officially signed my business sale in June. And I had turned down a much bigger offer in 2019. And the reason I turned it down is my partners didn't necessarily want to sell to that firm because they wanted to do it on their own. So I sold to one of the partners, which I took a much lower payment up front, but had a very good licensing deal to get paid every single month based upon the content that I was allowing them to utilize, that I had owned and was licensing to them. But eventually they felt threatened and thought that I was doing things they didn't want me to do. Like where you saw me speak, they would be against that. And they started to get stifling that way. And so we ended up fully divorcing in a relationship with no licensing agreements or any involvement in September of 2023. And that's been really hard and really brutal and really, you know, frustrating in many ways. So that's been 6 months of a lot of contemplation and a lot of healing and a lot of what do I want to do next? And I've landed knowing like major lessons that I've learned and excited about what I'm moving forward with. And part of the reason why did I rewrite my first book ever, it was a New York Times bestseller, and then my most popular book ever, was because I wanted to write it based upon who I am today, what the economy is today. And I had to shorten the one book because it was my first book. And I just, you know, I was wordy because I didn't know how to write. And then the other book just it merited some more legacy conversation that I've really figured out over the last decade since I originally wrote it. So it's almost like when I was at a Taylor Swift concert, she talked about Taylor's Edition, these albums that she's re-releasing, because she was upset that Scooter Braun bought her portfolio and she was now doing it in her way. I was like, you know, I'm doing the Taylor's edition of my books. I'm doing the Garrett Gunderson version, the updated, you know, expanded, improved with who I am today, post sale of my company. So yeah.
That's wild. All right. So how long were you building the thing before you exited it? Because I'm trying to do the math, but I'm not certain that
Yeah, January it was December of 2000 when I officially formed a partnership with three other guys, Ray Hooper, Les McGuire, and Michael Isom. And that was called Ingenuity. We spelled it with an E, Ingenuity. And we were working really well together. And then in June of 2006, two of the guys died in a plane crash.
what?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a company plane, and they were presenting at a workshop for our other partner, Michael, and they ended up hitting some microbursts when they went to land, and it pushed one of the wings down, and plane crashed. So yeah, pretty crazy. Young guys.
That had to be a life altering experience.
Yeah, and in some like hard to say it this way, but I'm just gonna say it like in good and bad ways. Like in the bad ways were like I lost two really close friends that were young, really amazing people. And you know, Les just he died in June, but in April we had this retreat where he's like, "Man, I love my life. I can't imagine it being any better." You know, and so like that's like wow, you know. That sticks with me of like living a life that I love. And Ray and I had it out like December the year before because I had him speak at one of our study groups and I didn't feel like he was prepared. And I was really pissed. And I was like, I don't know if you're doing enough for the firm. And that year, he was like carrying the weight for the whole firm. So like we had this like really intense conversation. So at least I was like in a really good place with both of them, like where we had left nothing unsaid. They knew I loved them, you know, and vice versa. And they, you know, so that was good. The bad thing was for 4 months, I just worked relentlessly to the point where I gained 25 pounds. I rarely saw my son, who was just born in April of 2005, and this was June of 2006. So he was really young. And my wife in November on our way to Thanksgiving was just like, you know what? You're pretty extraordinary at business, but you're ordinary at best as a husband and father. It's like, oh, yeah. So, you know, it's like I was trying to live their legacy instead of mine. And so there was that. And, you know, the thing is, I learned so much from Les. He was our philosophical leader. He was really the driver of content primarily. I was like the secondary. I was like his backup to a certain degree. And with him gone, I definitely like notched it up tenfold. Like, because I wasn't in his shadow or deferring to him. So I gained some power that way. And it was never that he wanted me to be in his shadow. It's just he would talk forever and go late at every event. Like, you know, but now I'm like, maybe it's just because he had a short time here on earth that he had to do those, you know, but like I'm an on-time guy. If we're supposed to end at a certain time, I'm on stage, that's the time I'm ending. He's like, that's a suggestion. We'll go another hour or two. Who cares, you know? So yeah, that was wild. And Michael and I, you know, we are back doing business together. Michael and I had worked together for a while, but we had taken a break for the last few years because it was just contention between my firm that I sold and he was doing services for that firm. But, you know, so now it's kind of cool that we've been able to reunite a little bit after this post-sell thing. So I'm really happy now, but when I saw you, I was still like in the thick of being very unhappy with selling the firm. Very, very, you know, disenchanted still.
I appreciate your openness about it not being all good because I think so many folks believe it's supposed to be all good. And then when it's not, they struggle. And so you walked up to me in the hallway and you said, I really appreciated your talk. I called my wife right after.
Yeah, I remember you
Um,
saying 75% of people that sell their business are unhappy they did. And I was like, okay, I'm one of the 75%. And not that I want other people to feel like this, but it's good to know that other people feel like this and I'm not alone.
Not being alone is part of the way that we normalize the conversation, and it's why we have this podcast. So outside of people being upset and wanting to keep you from talking and others, like, what outside, like, the money hit, right? I suspect that that initial wire was more money than you'd ever had in your account at one time that was yours to be able to go spend. Is that
Not really.
fair?
I didn't, because I did more of a licensing deal. So I took a lot less up front and I was financing part of it, a large part of it. So I was getting payments on it. So I got some lump sum, I was getting payments, and then I was getting this really nice, like there's two programs. We had Wealth Builders Club and Wealth Architecture. Wealth Builders Club was $200 a month. We had like 1,200 people in it. I got 15% of everything that came in. We had another program, Wealth Architecture, which people are paying either 300 to 450, depending on when they got the program per month. I was getting 15% of that. And we had 2,200 total people in those programs. So I was getting a six-figure monthly cash flow, which I preferred cash flow over a lump sum, because a lump sum, now I got to figure out how to invest it and deploy it. And, I'm a guy that builds for cash flow. So the first year I was so happy. I was like, this was such a good decision. I don't care that I took, I really upfront took 10% of what I would have got from a firm in 2019. But I was like, that firm was paying me a lump sum, a low eight figures amount, and then no cash flow. This was a low seven figures amount, but monthly cash flow. And I also felt like, I'm honoring my partners. So the second year, still going pretty well. And what happens is I'm speaking at an event, and the person I sold to doesn't like the person that's hosting the event, and doesn't like another person that's speaking there, and thinks I'm building a business that would compete, which wasn't true. 100% of my leads were still going to the firm that I sold. And that, he sent me an email just saying, like, I think you're building a competing business. I want to change our arrangement. And I was like, wow, like an email after knowing you for this long? I know I'm probably teetering the line here on what I'm talking about. I got to be careful with what I say ultimately because of the agreements we have, but he unilaterally changed the agreement. And that was like, yeah, okay, fine. You have the right in the contract to do that. I have the right to say you can't use my name, image, likeness on anything public facing ever again. And that has really been a problem for them. Like, it's, and it's crazy because I think this whole thing went sideways because of hurt feelings, because of, emotions, not because of, and that's not how this person normally operates. They're usually pretty logical.
Wow. Wow. So 20 plus year relationship can unravel pretty quickly, huh?
Yeah.
So what's cool though is you could be okay with letting go of the cash flow. Because I think so many people do things for money that they feel like they have to. They're trapped. They're a slave to it. So what got you okay with it? Saying, all right, bye.
Man, I got chills as you said that, dude. You like nailed it. So I wrote this book called Money Unmasked. Money Unmasked. And in that book, I talk about two forms of scarcity. Playing to win, when we're chasing something always at the expense of today. Nothing's ever good enough. It's always one day, someday. It's always in the future. And it's always more, bigger, better, faster. Most people don't see that as a form of scarcity, but it really is, because people never find contentment, joy, happiness, because it's always out of reach. But the other one that most people are stuck in is playing not to lose. Playing not to lose is holding on to what we have and, scrimping, saving, sacrificing. And one of my notions in the book is you don't have to sacrifice to succeed. When we make choices based upon who we are and design the game the way we want to play it, there is no sacrifice. That we work because we choose to work. What if you think that the work is the win, not just the outcome? What if the work is the joy? What if the process is the payoff, not just the outcome? And so I was playing not to lose because I had to behave a certain way, do certain things that I already chose to sell the business because I didn't want to do those things anymore. Now I was just doing a small amount of them. So I was playing not to lose to keep that money coming in every month, and I was unhappy doing it. Yes, it was a good amount of money. no, I didn't have to work that hard for it because I'd kind of worked for it in the past. But it also constrained me of what my options were, my freedom, who I associate with, what I want to do, how I want to do it. And so I knew that I had to break that off. I knew that I had to let that go. And if that wasn't enough, I had to unwind another partnership I was in because it wasn't functioning at the level that I wanted to, because I realized that I had a different work ethic and a different vision. And so that was one was officially done in September and the other one was officially done in December. And man, that was a lot in 1 year to go through. And it was the first time in my life I had negative thoughts more than I had positive thoughts for certain days. Like on net, I would have weeks where I'm like, I was pessimistic this week. I was judgmental of myself. I was embarrassed that I didn't make this work, or that I sold it for as little as I did, or that I don't have this 400,000 person database that I helped create, or like I had all of these judgments and I was like, how could I be so naive to just trust without verifying? I would always tell my clients to verify just because I had a 15-year relationship. I didn't look over certain things, or I just trusted without, looking. And I was like, my wife is like, that's one of the things I love about you is that you are trusting. She's like, so you lost some money because you were trusting. I'd hate you to lose your soul and your happiness and your glow because you are skeptical. She's like, let's just make sure in the future we have our attorneys and other people that verify everything, but keep being a trusting person. And she's got better intuition, so she can call out when people maybe aren't the best, because I just think people are going to do what they say they're going to do, and they're going to be who they say they are. But what's kind of cool is some of the people I never expected to ever be able to do something with in business, when this happened, were like, I'd love to be in business with you. And these are people I've known for decades. And I was like, why didn't you think of that before? I'm like, I just never thought that they would have done this or would have been open to it. So I'm just in this phase going like, how do I build the life I love, doing the things I love with the people I love? Because I stopped doing some of the things I loved in my business because I didn't speak up. They were about scale, I was about impact, and I got to see values mismatches, right? And the thing is, if you mismatch values, it doesn't make the person good or bad, it's just not a values match. Like my values now is, I have this group that's a really small group of 12 people that have come and done one-on-one full day coaching with me that then kind of stay engaged afterwards. And the stuff we talk about is vulnerable, it's intimate, it's connected, there's breakthrough, there's trust. It's not just numbers, it's not just data. And so it's exciting, but shit, it was hard to get here. It was tough, man. It was really hard. It was really hard.
Did you enjoy the journey?
I enjoyed some of the journey, and some of the journey I hated. It was a love-hate relationship depending on what was going on. What I hated was like unwinding things and divorcing and stopping and losing relationships, But I also got to tell you, what a gift comedy was, because I had rekindled any relationship that I hadn't talked to in over a decade through comedy. I had people that came to my comedy shows that I hadn't seen since high school. I had people that I hadn't talked to for whatever reason for a long period of time that showed up at the shows. I put entrepreneurs on stage to do 3 minutes of comedy if they were my friends and said that they were interested because I wanted to give them a shot. And it was just like, I did 15, 16, 17 cities that I didn't even have a database anymore, but my friends packed the house for me. So I had that was going on, which was really exciting. And then I had this kind of unravel, which was really disheartening. But I also knew, if I'm going to design a game worth playing, if I'm going to love my life, I have to let go of certain things and I have to evolve. And when I write a book, the problem with writing books for me is I have to live out what I write. And sometimes I philosophically understand it before I actually understand it emotionally or through experience. So I wrote Killing Sacred Cows and said, net worth is a poor indicator of wealth, cash flow is far superior. And then I just watched my net worth dwindle because I didn't have enough cash flow in 2008 and more net worth. And I was like, well, yep, that was proving my point, and I now feel it from a firsthand experience, or this playing not to lose thing that was going on with selling my firm. I realized that when I wrote Money Unmasked, I'm like, yeah, now I can understand what I write at deeper levels. It's almost like prophetic because it's coming through me, and then I'm experiencing it, like, oh, I really, really get it.
I think I know there are people out there that swallowed their tongue because you said net worth is a poor indicator of wealth. When did you first get exposed to that concept?
when because of the year 2000 and 2001 and 2002, where the market really went down, that was like this big exposure for me because the only thing I was teaching people to do was accumulate. And the problem is I experienced it because I had over 100 properties in real estate in 2008, but a lot of them weren't really that cash flow positive. They were just appreciating substantially from.
Hey guys, as you might know, a very small percentage of the people who actually listen to this podcast are subscribers. So do us a favor, subscribe. In fact, we did some analytics and we found out that only 25% of the people who listen are subscribers. And our goal is to get that to about 75% over the next 3 months. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get notified when our new episodes come. We plan to bring immense value to you guys going forward as we continue to improve the content that we create at Dreamcatcher. Your dreams should be real.
04, 05, 06, 07. And so I was like, it doesn't matter because I'm getting so much value. But that value just got rocked so quickly. And now all of a sudden I'm hemorrhaging on that. And I have to come up with extra cash flow to cover that. And I can't sell the properties at the level I wanted to because the equity went away so fast. I mean, some of these properties lost 60% of their equity, right? So even though I felt like, man, all my properties, I don't have any property without at least 30% equity. Who cares? Net worth is, and I was like, no. When you have to liquidate at the wrong time, net worth is meaningless. Like, not that it's not useful, it's just a snapshot. It's our balance sheet, our assets versus our liabilities. And if we can't understand our balance sheet's relationship to our income statement, then we're devoid of future potential and sustainability. Because if we can't capitalize those assets to create income, what good is that asset? It's just stored potential, right? And if we can't address those liabilities so that expenses don't eat us alive, so what most people do is they focus on net worth first. But what I think is, what if we focus on the income statement first? And that's my game of efficiency first. Plug the financial leaks and become financially independent with your cash flow. Because if you're financially independent, where your assets create enough cash flow to cover your basic lifestyle, every active dollar you earn can build more assets and actually at a 10x rate, because most people are trying to save 10% of their money, trying to earn 10% over 30 years. But what happens if you have enough cash flow that you can reinvest 100% of your income? That's such exponential growth. And that's why I was so addicted to that cash flow, right? And why it was so hard to give that up and do this kind of divorce. But at the same time, I now have this amazing situation where I come with the lessons and I get to establish how I'm going to play the game. I get to establish what I do. So I have really pretty clear parameters. I love to write. So I write a blog, I write one a week to one every other week. It just depends on if I'm traveling, right? And I love doing it. They're 2,500 words. There's a lot of emotion in them. I love to do one-on-ones where I really get to watch someone grow, but I don't want to do more than 24 in a year. So 2 a month. And then I really get connected to them. And they, I was texting with one of them this morning, and now he's having me speak at his event. And I get to watch their growth and be part of it. So I get a lot more connection there. So I want to continue to do that. And then I wrote this theatrical keynote on Money Unmasked, where I act out 4 characters. I want to do that twice a month. And then I want to have a program that allows me to still reach more people, but still connect with them and see them. So I got to learn all those lessons in the model I'm developing. And really, I sold my business in 2021, and I'm just finalizing and happy with where my model is 100% recently. Now I'm I know the model. This is the model I want to work with. I'm ready to build the team around that. I know what not to do, and I'll make some new mistakes, I know. But the mistake I'm not going to make is ignoring my intuition, not speaking up. I'm not going to, allow it to get so far that I'm I hate what I'm doing and I want to sell it. Because I think that if you're building your business to sell, that could be smart financially. But if you want to sell your business, you're probably in the wrong business. I want to build a business I never want to sell, even if I could, because it's an expression of who I am. It allows me to speak, write, create content, connect with people. And, why would I want to stop doing that? I want to do that when I'm 80. We took 2 months off and went to Italy. And by the end of that 2 months, I was so ready to come back to work. I mean, I loved the time. It was awesome. But if I have too much time off, I get bored. And there's only so many TV series I could watch, or, so many hobbies that I can do. I like to create.
And I think that's what so many people think on the backside of their exit that they're going to do. They're going to go scuba diving or lay on the beach or golf or backpack through Europe or go on cruises. And like, yeah, and then you're going to be bored. You're a builder, you're a creator. You have to exercise the muscle because if you don't, it'll atrophy and then you'll be struggling mentally. Now, you brought up the conversation you had with your wife on the way to Thanksgiving.
Oh man.
Did you fix that? Or are you still
Oh yeah.
mediocre at best?
I fixed that quickly. I'll tell you how that went. So I I know that if I get defensive, that it's because I need to look at something, right? If someone says something to me and I want to argue about it, it's like, oh, that's triggering something in me. And I was at least aware enough that when she said that, like I felt that trigger and I was immediately like, oh, she's right. And I remember I was speechless. I got emotional. And then the rest of the drive, we talked and I said, all right, I'm just gonna call my team and I'm home all of December. I'm just gonna be home. This was December of 2006. And I remember just telling my team, I was like, look, I might do a little bit of work, but really my priority is my family. And I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I need to like recharge. I'm going to start working out. And so I just went off email and, checked in a little bit. But what I found was I was rejuvenated because now I'm hanging out with my wife. We're playing with our son. We're having conversations. Like it was, there was some damage to correct. This wasn't an overnight thing. Like there was like trust that had to be rebuilt that I would be there for them, And so like it was a little volatile at times because I was numb for 4 months and she was like, what is this what my life's going to be? But the good news is we had another kid just pretty shortly after. So obviously we got in a place where she felt comfortable enough to have another kid. And this is what I did. I said, look, I'm going to assess my life and look at the areas where I'm most dialed in. Where am I crushing it? Because I know my marriage was one that it wasn't crushing it, and I knew that my health wasn't. And I took these areas and I said, I'm going to apply what I'm doing in those areas to my marriage and to my health. And so number one, I had a business coach. So I'm like, all right, I want someone to help us in our marriage. So I was like, we need to like have someone we talk to. So we hired a marriage coach. I was like, I need to have someone help me with my fitness. So I hired, and then I went and I bought books. I bought tons of books on marriage. I bought tons of books on health. And like, there were one or two that were so instrumental on each side that I pretty much reread them every so often, right? So those were super helpful. Then I said, who do I know that has the best marriage in the world? And I picked out 3 couples. I said, these 3 couples are ahead of us. They have an amazing marriage. And so I said, look, babe, we're going to go to Chicago. They're going to host a little commitment ceremony for us. I'm going to bring my buddy Sean in, who's got a degree in relationships and communication, and he's going to do a little talk. And then you're going to go with the girls and ask them about their best practices. I'm going to go with the guys and ask them about their best practices. And it was transformative because we had kids and she never felt comfortable having any support. Like it would make her a bad mom. But they're like, no, you have a part-time nanny. You need time to yourself. And Garrett's working, and they're like, you really should put him as your main priority because the kids are going to grow up and leave the house, and you're still going to be married. And like, if you don't put him as your top priority and you put the kids ahead of him, that's kind of damage. And like, the guys are telling me stuff. So I wrote a vision for my marriage to be a premier romantic and an extraordinary husband. And then we did a second honeymoon in Chicago. Our friends own this amazing penthouse, and they set us up on a week long of like just envelopes you'd open and take us to different things and dinners. It was just like, it was better than our honeymoon. And so now I had a vision. I had the education, I had the support, I had the same things I had in the other areas of my life, and my health immediately improved and my marriage immediately improved. I call this my success formula. Everyone has their own success formula. Sometimes it's mentoring, coaching, systems, accountability. Sometimes they pay attention to it when they pay for it, like whatever it is. But I just did those same things in my marriage, and we got into a great place. And we're 22 years in June that we'll have been married. And, like even when we're talking, she's been so amazing through this business thing. And I'll just tell her like stuff. She's like, yeah, but look, you have an amazing relationship with your kids. We have an incredible relationship. She like always tries to remind me of all these great things, right? Like I have a great relationship with my sisters and her brother and sister and my parents and her parents. Like, I think we're got to be at the like rarest of rare when you look at like how connected we are as an extended family, and that's been work. So like that is nice to remember, and it's nice to just have good people that give good advice, and I've taken that advice over the years, and those couples have been so good for us that we got around them and talked to them and got insights from them, and now I've been asked to speak at events on those topics of marriage, which is hilarious because I just took some of those things I learned. I would tell someone like, oh, you need to come speak at my event, and I'm like, dude, how confusing. I'm a financial guy getting up talking about relationships, and someone's like, with your long hair, I thought you were like a romance novel dude, like showing up, and I didn't know you did finance. And I was like, yeah, brand confusion for sure. But yeah, I would say that doing really well on the husband and father department right now. So that's good.
I think so many people just blow it up. Like you've told me some things that literally could have do if you weren't intentional and did that work. So you said that was 2006, 2008, you went through the financial struggles with losing the equity in the homes. If you didn't work on your relationships before that, it probably wouldn't have made it through it. Then you fast forward, you raise the kids, you get to the exit, and then it's like, hey, we're going to turn off significant dollars every month in income. And I don't know where the new income is going to come from. And you okay with that? And if you don't have the relationship, it blows it up too. You're crazy. No, you got to stay there. You got to keep doing the thing. And they don't care about your happiness because it's about their security. And like, there's a whole lot there, but being on the same team allowed you to transcend that. But we watch people get into the 6 centers of doubt, and relationships is at level 2, and they just blow the whole thing up. They turn on the people that have been with them for the whole journey because they have a new identity, because they have more capacity now, or they have more options than they did in the past. And instead of doing that, you turned inward and you said, hey, you've been with me for the whole journey. Let's figure this out together. Was that the wisdom of the folks that you sought out for mentorship, or was there something else driving that?
Well, there's been a lot of like, I always have mentors. Like my wife and I have, her best friend coaches me every other week. Like she's amazing. And we work through this process called Love, Accept, Forgive. And it's just all about processing and going through emotions, because so many of us are taught to just ignore emotions, suppress emotions, fight emotions, pretend they're not there, all that kind of stuff. So with all that, that's really helpful. And I've done full day therapy sessions. Like I've just always been working on myself from the time I was a kid. When I was like, I talked to one of my early financial mentors. He's like, go to Landmark. I was like, what's Landmark? I just showed up, and then and got value from that. So I've always been willing to take that advice. And right now, what I find is my inner circle. I'll say like I have an inner circle here in Utah, and I have an inner circle kind of extended outside of where I live. Like they're all the amount of wealth that they have and success, like is insane. Like I'm the small fish in these groups. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And so it's interesting because it is pulling me up. It is kind of like, it's just, it's that story of who are the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it is that also coming off of this situation has made it somewhat difficult, because I'm like so used to just being so productive and just getting things done so easy and having a big team to do it, that I see on the other side, like I could see where I'm going. It's much bigger than where I was before, but that's a weird road in between, It's like it's from ease and reputation and just so much to then all of a sudden I'm like my reputation seems like it's bigger than I am, and like I'm just grappling with that because I never want to pretend. I never want people to think. I've had people walk up to me when I speak and say, are you a billionaire? And I'm like, I chuckle because it's very far from being a billionaire. And that's not really, I'm not one of those people that's on my goals, because there's a lot of pressure with being a billionaire for sure. And even with all of the turmoil, I mean, because I did get an exit, I did have, money. I was pretty smart with my money from 2010 until, the sale of my business. So even though we lowered our lifestyle temporarily, our lifestyle was pretty ridiculous anyway, and it wasn't really that lowered. Like, we live in the same house no matter how much the exit would have been. Like, we're in the house we want to be in. We have the cabin that we love more than any place on the world. No matter how much the exit was, we'd still own that, and that's free and clear. We have another place we're going to build a music studio. Okay, we probably would have built the music studio sooner on the 3.5 acres that's out in the wilderness on a river. But right now we have a renter that's the guy I bought the property from that takes care of it at cash flow. So it's like, the only difference is it would be nice to fly private, and like, who's going to feel bad for me that I'm not flying private? I don't know anyone that's going to feel bad about that at all, including myself. You know, it's like, that's a pretty baby little thing to be worried about. And it's really the only thing that would have changed, other than maybe my confidence of having things be more productive and be able to have things out in people's hands sooner and stuff like that. So really, I look at my life and be like, it's amazing that I'm sitting here frustrated about this when it's, in the reality of the scope of my life, a very temporary thing. Feels consequential now. When I look back on it, will be relatively inconsequential. I'm certain I'm gonna have massive gratitude for it in the end, because my intuition wasn't wrong. I made the right decision. How I went about it maybe wasn't the best way and most effective way to do it. So yeah, I mean, I would do it again. I just would have done it differently. That's the thing. Selling the business was the right thing to do. I'm glad I'm not part of that business anymore.
So he said, nobody's gonna feel bad for me for not flying private. Not even me. That's hilarious. All right. So what's cool is you already had the lifestyle that you wanted to have pre-exit.
Yeah.
And you didn't creep it as a result of the exit.
Well, I mean, we sold our house and moved to a new house. This new house is definitely more expensive, but I mean, that's the only thing that my lifestyle increased was, and this payment on this house is not that much more than the last house. It's just that it's a much bigger house. And so we have definitely put furniture and, you know, all this kind of stuff in it. But if I wouldn't have exited, I still would have done all that. We still would have moved. We moved because of location and some issues we found that impacted our health with where we were living, you know, so like mold and that kind of stuff. So
It's all intentional though. It's not just for the sake of flaunting. It's not.
no.
And I think people get lost in that. It's like, well, what character do I have to be now that I have what I have? How do I demonstrate that I'm at whatever level, centimillionaire, decamillionaire, billionaire, whatever it is that they were aspiring to? How do I signal to people that I am this or that? And you've been able to stay outside of that. What do you credit that to?
That's a lot of personal development and work over the years and a really good family. I mean, you know, like my family doesn't treat me differently or want to, like, it just doesn't matter to them. You know, they love me for me, not because of what I've accomplished or what people think of me. Like my mom thinks I'm very generous. I like that. That's how she views it, right? My dad, you know, I get to take him hunting every year. Like I'm glad I have enough funds to do that, which is great. But like, I just have a very solid family. My wife is really dialed in with this kind of stuff. Like if I got to a place where I was like, I'll give you an example. So when we were driving on that drive that my wife called me out on, we're driving in the Bentley, you know? So I have the outward visualization of wealth. We have a company plane just before that, you know? So from a visual standpoint, I've got all the wealth that there is to have, but like I was pretty broke in the reality because of how she viewed how I was being broke in the sense of like love and how I showed up. And so like I learned pretty quickly from that example, like that it was funny because I posted a picture of me in the Bentley on the salt flats and someone's like, what a douche. And I was like, you know, and it was kind of douchey. Like someone told me I should go do it and it wasn't really my style. But like the car, I once did get it parked up front at a hotel and I was like, why didn't they park that up front? What's wrong with them? And my wife's like, what is wrong with you? Like, why, who gives a shit? Is this who you are now? Because this car's stupid. Like, she just doesn't care about cars. And neither did I. I bought it because my business partner said, oh, you're not going to attract high-end clients if you drive the same car as our secretary. But the reality is I didn't get any high-end clients from the Bentley. The only people that wanted to talk to me because I owned a Bentley were teenagers, dude. Teenage kids loved that Bentley. And sometimes I drove it to nice restaurants, and girls that had no good intentions. Those are the only two people that gave a shit about that car, right? Like nobody ever cared. Like, so I think that my wife really called me out on that pretty quickly. I drive a truck. I love it more than any car I've ever had. It's the same truck I had pre-exit. I don't have any intention to replace it. I love it. It's amazing. I don't even think about vehicles. That's not where I'm going to dive in. I dive in on spending money on design in my books. I dive in on, how I create my content and go with 4 colors, which cost twice as much, or getting with a graphic designer and building out a whole different way that someone's experienced the book. That's how I spend my money. That's what lights me up. And, none of my friends care what I drive. None of them do. Like, they just don't care. Like, in I have friends that are car guys. I was with my friend Dan. He's buying like 4 $200,000 cars right now. Just bought his head of his media company, a Porsche GT. Like, cars are part of his life. He loves it. Like, I'm all for it. He's worth so much money. It's nothing to him, but he doesn't care what I drive. He would celebrate if I had bought a car I loved, So I'm really clear about that's not, my other friend that I'm going to see Saturday that's in my inner circle, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He drives a Honda Pilot. Like, he just doesn't care. That's just not his thing. I think you're either a car guy or you're not. And the thing is, if you are, go all in. Love it. Enjoy it. If a Bentley's your thing, do it. But if you're me, just drive a truck and be happy,
I think the magic of knowing who you are and not trying to fit into the box. And I think that's just your story all along. There are paths that are worn, and most of those paths aren't for you. You like to find your own path and create your own things and challenge the status quo when people are trying to force you into that box. I love the movie The Matrix, and when Neo takes the red pill, he sees the world in a totally different way. And I think there's a lot of us out here who are taking the pill and opening up doors for people to see things in a different way so that they don't feel like they have to settle or do things just for the sake of money. Because I found that every time that I've done things just for the sake of money, it's negatively impacted my experience. And I've always had less respect for myself on the other side of it. And if you're willing to sell your respect for money, I think you can get in trouble pretty quickly.
Yeah, money's not the thing that I worry about with me. It's that I have this resistance with social media. Like, I don't love putting content on social media all the time. Like, most content I put up on social media is just recording something like this and chopping it up. So it doesn't really require a lot. Or have someone flying in town that wrote the definitive book on business acquisition, Walker. He wrote Buy Then Build, and we're going to just spend a full day at my cabin filming. That's going to be fun. But like, I feel like this, should I put more money into it to get more views and put more time? Like, that's where I struggle, because I know that if I had a more substantial presence on social media, it would be beneficial. But it's also half ego and it's also half nuisance. And so I have to be like, is this what I really want to do? Well, I just started a couple weeks ago posting comedy clips. My son is editing my comedy clips. And so far, every clip has got 10,000 views, which isn't a ton, but it feels great. Like, I know that I wouldn't feel different in reality if it had 100,000 views. I think I would, but it would be one of those metrics that is only a vanity metric for me, right? Like, who really, like, that's the thing I grapple with most. And it's funny because I really feel like I've been working on not wanting to have this necessity to be known or this, like, quasi fame or whatever it is. And so I felt like I've been working on it a lot and like working through it. And I tell my buddy that we're launching a podcast called Funny Money. I was telling him, like, yeah, man, I'm good. Like, I don't need to, like, I was doing things for the wrong reason with social media sometimes, but I wasn't all the way in because I wasn't. And that night, 6 people came up and recognized me and talked to me. And he's like, what are you talking about? And it felt amazing, though, because we had great conversation. They had read my books. So what I really want is people just to engage with my work. And if it's 100 people that deeply engage with it, that's more meaningful than 10,000 that don't know much about it but hit a like button, right? So like that, I'm not 100% enlightened there. I'm still working through that process right now myself, you know?
Yeah, but the awareness about detachment and the awareness about the motivation, I think, is the important piece because our intentions are so important and so few people actually are in tune with what their intentions are. Or they pretend that there's something different than what they are for the outside world. But when they really interrogate it and contemplate it, they find out that that's not really why you were there. And you get trapped into some of those things that become slippery slopes. Man, this thing is flown by. I can't believe that an hour has passed, man. I'm so grateful for you for sharing so vulnerably and being open about your journey because exits aren't perfect. And there are things that can unravel. Uh, there's negative impact to the folks around you at times if you're not careful, but you've done the work. And you said something along the way that I just found profound, and I've not heard it said in that way before. You said, um, you said the process is the payoff. And we're going to title the show that, and it's probably not clickbaity enough, but at the end of the day, what I truly believe is there's so much value there. Like, if you do the work, it doesn't matter what the outcome is because in the end, you're probably going to get an outcome greater than what you desired if you actually did the work. And I watch so many people try to shortcut, skip steps, but you've been willing to do all of the things necessary to build it and hold other people accountable to the vision and the mission when they wanted to skimp or scrape or scoot around or maybe even cut corners. And I think that's a testament to why you have had the success that you've had in the amount of time that you've had it, because some of the stuff that you've built for other people probably would have taken twice as long, but they weren't willing to invest at the level that you were willing to invest in order to get the outcome.
I think sometimes we're just afraid of that, right? Like investing that quickly in ourselves because people get addicted in net worth a little bit and watching that number rise. And sometimes we have to put that into improving our life. Like I look at it like the more I can improve my life, the more I can help other people with their life. Because if I'll lead by example, if I'll invest in myself, like I talked about everything from therapy to having coaches and mentor, like I think all it's just the same as like, hey, it's healthy to, stretch or go for a walk outside or work out. And if you don't do that and you expect a result, well, I look at that. We need the mental gym too, like having people that can ask us questions or hold us accountable or help us process something. And as you say, the process is the payoff. I think that that's my solution in social media, right? Like it's just what is the process that I love about it instead of like I don't want to. I'm stingy. I don't want to look at the feeds or anything, but I do like creating content if people like enjoying it. I just need to find what is my process that's the payoff. Like with Walker coming in, I'm going to enjoy my whole day with him tomorrow filming. So that's going to be a great payoff, versus, do you have his book, Buy Then Build?
Yeah, it's there on the top shelf. Yeah.
Yeah, because my philosophy is that the three big assets that are engines for cash flow are businesses, real estate, or intellectual property. And you don't have to do all three, but you at least, if you want to create recurring revenue, you got to get good at one. And otherwise, you're handing your money over and you're not in control of the outcome of your income. So I'm excited to have him talk about business acquisition. And I endorsed his book, not even knowing it was going to be a big book. Like I only endorse books I read from cover to cover. And I was like, this is a really good book. I didn't, and that book's got more reviews than my biggest book. So I'm like, damn, Walker, it's great to see him doing that well with it. So. And he's been a huge supporter of my comedy. He helped fill the St. Louis place when I went and did comedy, and so it's cool, like watching entrepreneurs show up for other people that try something new.
That's outstanding, man. And I think that's the one thing that keeps so many people stuck when they're thinking about exiting, the trying new and potentially failing at it and the ego that's associated with not being successful or having to work that hard again to get to an outcome.
Yeah.
you've got the network around you to support you on that journey and encourage you along the way. And I think so many of us out here don't have that and haven't been actively seeking it. But I think this conversation will bring that to the top. So I love to close these shows with one question, Garrett, and it is, what do you want the listeners to take away from the episode? Because we've crossed so much ground here. We've jumped over rivers and probably climbed mountains too.
Um, it's helpful to view things as they're happening for you, not to you. And it's even more helpful to design how you want to play in life instead of letting the world design it for you. Because the world has the intention of something that will not allow you to build the best life from a family standpoint and from an enjoying the process along the way. So when you design a game worth playing, you win. And you just design the game worth playing so you never want to exit from that life or from that play. And I just let that get out of hand and didn't keep it as play. It became work, and that's why I sold. So this time around, I've just invested a lot of time in writing and thinking and rewriting, like, what's my win? What's the game I want to play? What are the rules I want to play by? Who do I want to work with? Who do I want to serve? What don't I want to do? How can I, and I've written about that over and over, and I feel like meditate on it. And it's so fulfilling when that model shows up. But it's often something that requires not listening to anyone else and just listening to yourself for a minute. And not enough people do that.
The answer is within. Even if you need other people to help you find it, the answer is within.
Right.
Garrett, you're a dream catcher, man. Thank you so much for joining us on the episode. Your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.